Hi guys. I know I've been away for a little while, not doing a whole bunch of stuff for you guys, making a few videos for you guys to watch. I've been contemplating what to talk about in videos like this, and you know, I will admit I've done some dumb things. I may sound like a kind of smart guy or like sort of funny, like I'm making some sort of like taking on like the idea of a video game franchise that isn't doing so good as a movie and making such a detailed story and having so many different elements into it and putting so much detail into it. And that's because I want it to be science fiction, not just fantasy stuff. I want to make it sort of scientifically relatable, sort of logically explained in some situations, but still fantasy in other situations. Yeah, you can use electromagnetism to stick to metals and stuff. That doesn't mean that two werewolves with energy abilities will be able to shoot out a little bit of lightning out of their hands and stick to the side of a building and do all sorts of a kung fu fight like this in this direction, not where it's perpendicular, parallel to the ground. Well, on a surface perpendicular to the ground, but whatever. There is some science to it, but it's not fully explored basically. So I not only work in the fields in the idea of like sci-fi fantasy stuff. I work in the field of I also try to do some realistic design, some realistic technologies. And one technology that's caught my eye is one field is actually nuclear energy, and more specifically, thorium reactors. Now, don't get me wrong, fission reactors aren't the only reactors we're going to have in the next few years. In fact, I watched a TED Talk recently, and someone was saying that they were very close to achieving, that we are overall very close to achieving a functional fusion reactor. In fact, Lockheed Martin is already working on a prototype of one that's, you see like some of the beer kegs some guys are partying with, like you watch, again, I know this is going to sound like a dumb example, but Sydney White, you see the one where the nerd's upside down with a little spigot of beer heading to his mouth and he's doing a headstand on it? About that size? Yeah, that's about the size of the new fusion reactor being made by Lockheed Martin as a prototype. So it's a pretty compact system. We are getting this kind of level of complexity and technical capability. But I think that thorium energy could help carry the country for a little while until we get fully fieldable, fusion energy left. Next, because I think that thorium is the better way to go because we still have old, aging systems, and we don't seem to be worried about, the fact that most of our nuclear reactor technology is, hasn't been updated since the 1970s. So our old projected costs that look a bit cheap nowadays, those are statistics from back in the 70s. Now, because of the inflation of prices, we haven't been able to accurately pin down how much a new reactor would cost, but some people estimate it would be between $2 and $6 billion, and that's ridiculous, especially considering that we have to spend money to enrich the fuel, and we gotta burn away like 3% of the fuel. That's how much we burn away in the reaction before before the zirconium before the zirconium fuel rods break down. We use zirconium alloys to contain little fuel pellets with 45% in uranium on average, because 90% uranium you're going to get an explosion, so keep it safe and go for half of that, and that's the idea. And the issue is we only use a very small portion of the energy in the fuel. We're only using up a small amount of the fuel, but we're leaving the reaction going when we take it out of the reactor. Because uranium-235, it works like that. It's got that range, it's in that range of stability to where it will not explode or burn away rapidly and singe through everything, but it won't necessarily shut down once you get it going and keep it going for a little while. It's like a little runaway engine, and it's older technology and stuff. But there's still technology from the same time period that's being revived and revised as we speak, or as I speak, technically. Blabbering away. I improvise when I'm doing my videos, just letting you guys know. But thorium has. Oh boy. I hope I didn't mess the camera angle up a bit. thorium energy has the potential to change the world, has the potential to change our use of energy. It can bring us forward. It can help us supplement our use of fossil fuels or replace it entirely if we create new systems. So we're all focused on, going to electric cars. Where do you think you get the electricity from? We're burning coal, we are burning natural gas, and we are using renewable energy and nuclear energy. But nuclear is starting to diminish, which is kind of stupid. If you look at the energy supply for Los Angeles, we have 2 nuclear reactors supplying half of our energy, and the other half comes from renewable sources and coal and natural gas. We're using all these sources, but we could power it with 4 nuclear reactors and take up much less space. And if we make the right types of reactors, we can still cut down that number to maybe about 3 if we change the fuel, if we change the setup for the reactor, if we change things to make it more efficient and more safe. Once we do that, we can achieve a very good energy supply with limited byproducts. We're all worried about global warming, but we still try to use electricity to achieve more instead of some other stuff. We don't use gasoline-powered chainsaws now. No, now you gotta get an extension cord and plug it into the wall because you're saving the earth. Except you're not, because natural gas, when it burns, still releases carbon dioxide. You just get more bang for your buck. Anyways, thorium cannot, when we're looking at thorium, it's a much more stable fuel. You can use it in a salt system, which means you attach it to an anion, like a halogen, for example. For example, thorium fluoride. You make that into a salt and you mix it in a solution with other salts, basically mix it all together, and then you use a particle accelerator to get the whole thing going. Once you do that, you've got a good system that will continue to work for 25, 30 years, that will slowly but surely use up that energy, and it's walk-away safe because the salt naturally will expand and contract based on the temperature. So when your fuel particles are getting burnt up too quickly, it's producing too much heat, it makes the salt expand, and those neutrons that are powering this reaction, the little sparks that, and basically like the sparks in a gasoline engine that make the fuel ignite. Well, if you start to move the fuel away, then those sparks will not be hitting anything. Those little neutrons will not be hitting anything and setting off reactions. So then it will cool down, it will slow down, it will condense, bringing the fuel closer together, and which in a process makes the neutrons have an easier time hitting their target. And then in that cycle, and that little fluctuation helps moderate the system. The first nuclear reactor we built in America here, uranium-235 powered back in the 50s. You know how big the arc was? It wasn't like this. It was like this. It's ridiculous. It would max out on power output, and then it would shut itself down until the xenon byproducts drained out, basically. Until the xenon, which is what you get when you split uranium. You get an isotope of xenon, you get an isotope of, I think it wasn't barium, maybe it was either barium or beryllium. It's one of those two. I forgot which one it was, but yeah, I think it was element 63 and xenon. That's what you get when you split uranium-235, and xenon kills a nuclear reaction. You will get the same byproduct in a thorium fuel system, in a thorium reactor, because thorium itself is not the fuel. It is the source of the fuel. You give it a neutron, and 2 neutrons within the thorium will decay, and you will get uranium-233 as a result. Sometimes you'll get uranium-232, because apparently a neutron falls out or something. I don't know. But uranium-233 is a very clean fuel, and that is why thorium reactors will not run away. They are very safe systems, because you need to take the time to break this stuff down into the fuel, into uranium-233, to keep the reaction going, and it happens at a slower rate, so it will moderate itself in that way. And we have tons of thorium. We have so much more thorium than we have uranium. Uranium-235 has a half-life estimated at about 12 million years with an M, not a B. Thorium by itself has a half-life of 14 billion years. That's with a B, not an M, a B. Yes, it lasts that much longer. And the longer the half-life of something is, Sure, the longer it's giving off radiation, but think about it. If it's taking longer to break down, that means it's breaking down at a slower rate, at a much slower rate in the case of thorium compared to uranium. So it's a no-brainer, right? It's a fuel that's going to last longer, and that, well, when stocked up in massive amounts, won't be releasing as much radiation as an equal amount of uranium-235, which would be even more expensive to get. America's dream for nuclear power was energy that was clean and too cheap to meter. We're not living in that kind of world. We do not have the possibility. I don't think that it's going to be like that. I think we're still going to need to pay for energy to a certain degree, but once we get nuclear reactors in place, we can wait until solar panels, which are only about 40% efficient. They are not that great. Solar panels are not very efficient in a certain way. They don't really work that well. Solar energy is still in its infant stage. It needs to work. It needs some more work to become more efficient. There are systems ready that aren't being used. We could talk about that later, but we already have technologies to move forward, but we're not moving forward with this stuff. That's the point I'm trying to get at. And we could do that with nuclear energy, and that could lead us to the point in our development where we can then use more advanced technologies. But we need to take these little baby steps that will lead us in the right direction. And we need to continue traveling down these paths that are set before us by the technology we have. We could be using Tesla turbines instead to gather energy from our nuclear reactors, because Tesla turbines, they rely on the boundary layer effect, not just a flow of steam hitting a propeller basically and spinning it around. No. When you put in pressurized steam or any sort of pressurized gas, basically, you get a turbine that uses a vortex on the inside that uses friction with the air in a much greater surface area than a current turbine would. The Tesla bladeless turbine is much more efficient by using that vortex, and you have multiple discs stacked near each other with little exhaust ports that lead out one way. So it's pulling the exhaust in, and initially just goes like here, out. But once you get it going faster, it takes much longer to get to the center. So you're getting more friction, you're getting more energy out of it. The faster the disc spins, the more centrifugal force you're imparting on those gases, but it piles up and pushes gradually towards the center. And as you push more in, that vortex becomes more and more tightly wound, more and more tightly packed. And up to a certain point, that will get you much more speed until the point at which you can't fit any more air in that space in the turbine and will start to overload, but it's not that likely to happen. Even a small one, about the size of a quarter, can go up to about 70,000 RPM. Actually, no, I've seen one that go up to 100,000 RPM without failing, just on a normal compressor. Imagine if we could scale it up, and instead of water, maybe use something safer that won't rupture the concrete dome if it breaks out of the system and expands into steam. We could use pressurized carbon dioxide, which can handle the heat intensity of the reaction, and then we could use Tesla turbines, and we can get so much more energy, so much more efficiency out of these systems. This is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get people to think, okay? Think, what can you do with these technologies? Look at the pieces you have. Look at the big waste bin of history and look through the greatest developments. Find the ones that could work, that could change the world, and use them. And once we start thinking like that, we'll start changing our future. Thanks for watching.